Let me ask you about a specific moment. The moment you open your eyes in the morning. Not the moment 10 minutes later, after you have been up and moving and the world has come into focus. The very first moment. Eyes open, the room around you still dim or just brightening, and your visual system coming online after 7 or 8 hours of darkness. For some people, that moment is unremarkable. Vision arrives quickly and clearly. The room is sharp. The transition from sleep to waking sight is almost instantaneous. For a significant number of people over 60, it is not like that at all. Vision in the first minutes after waking is blurry, dry, sluggish to sharpen. The eyes feel heavy and tired, even if the rest of the body feels rested. Objects that should be clear are soft and indistinct. There is a grittiness, a rawness, sometimes a burning sensation that requires several blinks or several minutes before it resolves. And even when it does resolve, vision through the morning does not always feel as crisp as it once did. Contrast seems slightly reduced. Fine detail requires more effort. Reading in lower light is harder than it was a few years ago. Most people accept this as part of aging. They attribute it to their prescription needing updating, or to dry eye that is simply getting worse with time, or to the general visual decline that the calendar is supposed to bring. What very few people have been told is that the quality of morning vision, how quickly and how clearly your eyes recover after sleep, is significantly influenced by what happens to the eyes overnight. And that overnight ocular recovery is a nutritional process. It requires specific compounds, available through food, that your eyes use for repair, regeneration, and maintaining the optical quality of the structures that produce clear vision. Today I want to talk about one food, something specific, something available in most grocery stores, something with a genuinely compelling research profile for ocular health that addresses the biology of overnight eye recovery through multiple distinct mechanisms. Something you can begin eating tonight and notice the difference in your mornings over the following weeks. But, as always, the food only makes complete sense once you understand the biology. So let me take you through what is actually happening in your eyes overnight, because this is a part of human physiology that almost nobody discusses, and it is remarkable. Your eyes are among the most metabolically active tissues in your entire body. The retina, the light-sensitive tissue lining the back of the eye that converts incoming photons into the neural signals your brain reads as vision, consumes oxygen at a rate per unit weight that rivals even cardiac muscle. It is working extraordinarily hard, every waking hour, to perform the continuous photochemical reactions that produce vision. And unlike most other organs, it cannot rest during those waking hours. Every moment your eyes are open and light is entering them, the retina is actively processing. Sleep is when the retina gets its maintenance window. During the overnight hours, several critical processes occur in the eye that are essential for clear vision the following morning. The first is rhodopsin regeneration. Rhodopsin is the photosensitive pigment in the rod cells of the retina, the cells responsible for low-light vision and for the initial phases of the visual response. When light strikes a rhodopsin molecule, it undergoes a chemical change called bleaching. The molecule absorbs the photon and triggers the neural signal, but in doing so, it is chemically altered and can no longer respond to another photon until it is regenerated. Rhodopsin regeneration, the restoration of bleached rhodopsin back to its light-sensitive form, is a vitamin A-dependent process that occurs primarily during the dark hours of sleep. Without adequate vitamin A in the retinal tissue, rhodopsin regeneration is slowed, and the visual system begins the next day with reduced photoreceptor readiness. This manifests as slower visual adaptation when first waking, poorer performance in dim light, and reduced contrast sensitivity, particularly in the first hour after rising. The second overnight process is tear film restoration. The tear film, the thin fluid layer that coats the surface of the eye, is not simply water. It is a complex, three-layered structure comprising an inner mucin layer that allows the tear film to spread evenly across the ocular surface. a middle aqueous layer containing water, electrolytes, and proteins, and an outer lipid layer produced by the meibomian glands along the eyelid margins that prevents evaporation of the aqueous layer. The tear film is the first optical element your eye presents to incoming light. It forms the front surface of the eye's optical system. An irregular, thin, or unstable tear film produces optical aberrations and reduces the sharpness of the visual image before light has even reached the lens or the retina. During sleep, with the eyes closed and blinking absent, tear film dynamics change significantly. The aqueous layer partially dehydrates. The meibomian glands along the lid margins are secreting their lipid output, meibum, but this secretion tends to accumulate rather than being distributed by blinking, and the ocular surface experiences a long period without the mechanical refreshment of the blink. By morning, the tear film is at its most depleted state of the entire 24-hour cycle. The aqueous layer is thin. The lipid layer may be irregular. The mucin layer at the surface of the corneal epithelium needs the mechanical stimulus of the first blinks of the morning to spread properly. This is the direct cause of the dry, gritty, blurry sensation most people experience when they first open their eyes. The tear film has not yet been reestablished, and the optical surface of the eye is temporarily irregular. For people with any degree of meibomian gland dysfunction, a condition in which the lipid-secreting glands do not produce adequate or sufficiently fluid meibum, this morning tear film disruption is more pronounced and slower to resolve. And meibomian gland dysfunction is extremely common in older adults, affecting estimates ranging from 40 to 70% of people over 60. The quality of the meibomian gland secretion, the viscosity and composition of the lipid layer it produces, is influenced by dietary fat intake. Specifically, by the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids in the diet, which directly affects the biochemical composition of the meibum. Diets adequate in omega-3 fatty acids produce a more fluid, more functionally effective meibum that spreads more smoothly across the tear film and evaporates less rapidly. This is one of the most direct connections between what you eat and the quality of your morning vision. The third overnight process is the repair of oxidative damage to the photoreceptors and the retinal pigment epithelium, the layer of cells just behind the photoreceptors that provides them with nutrient support and performs the daily recycling of photoreceptor outer segments. Every day, light exposure generates reactive oxygen species in the retinal tissue through the photochemical reactions of vision. These reactive oxygen species cause ongoing oxidative damage to the delicate photoreceptor structures. The repair of this damage is an overnight process. The retinal pigment epithelium breaks down and recycles damaged photoreceptor outer segment components and synthesizes new ones during the dark hours. This daily renewal process is what maintains photoreceptor function over decades of continuous use. The efficiency of this overnight repair process depends on antioxidant availability in the retinal tissue, specifically on the macular pigment, the layer of carotenoid pigments, primarily lutein and zeaxanthin, that sits over the macula and provides both optical filtering of blue light during the day and antioxidant protection during the overnight repair process. The density of this macular pigment is one of the most reliable indicators of retinal health. It declines when dietary carotenoids are insufficient, and its depletion is directly linked to progressive retinal damage and the development of age-related macular degeneration. Lutein and zeaxanthin cannot be synthesized by the body. They must come from food, consistently, every day. And the dietary intake of these specific carotenoids in most older adults in Western countries is substantially below what the retina needs to maintain adequate macular pigment density. Now, with those three overnight processes in mind, rhodopsin regeneration, tear film restoration, and oxidative repair of photoreceptors, let me tell you about the food. Sweet corn, specifically whole kernel sweet corn. The yellow variety, eaten fresh, frozen, or minimally processed, And the reason it belongs at the top of this list for morning vision clarity is more specific than its general reputation as a nutritious vegetable suggests. Sweet corn, yellow corn in particular, is one of the highest dietary sources of both lutein and zeaxanthin of any commonly eaten food. This is not widely known, and I think it is one of the most significant nutritional facts in eye health that has been consistently underreported. When people think of lutein and zeaxanthin, they typically think of dark leafy greens, kale, spinach, collard greens, and those are excellent sources. But yellow sweet corn, gram for gram, provides concentrations of lutein and zeaxanthin that compare favorably with many leafy greens, in a form that many people find considerably more palatable and considerably easier to incorporate into an evening meal. A half cup of cooked sweet corn provides approximately 1 to 2 milligrams of lutein and zeaxanthin combined, a meaningful contribution toward the 4 to 6 milligrams per day that research suggests is associated with optimal macular pigment density maintenance. And crucially, the lutein and zeaxanthin in corn are bound in a food matrix alongside corn oil, the natural fat present in the corn kernel, which significantly improves carotenoid absorption. Lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble. They require dietary fat to be absorbed efficiently, and corn conveniently delivers both the carotenoids and the fat in the same food. The mechanism by which increased dietary lutein and zeaxanthin improves morning vision quality is twofold. First, adequate macular pigment density means better optical filtering of the blue wavelength light that is most prevalent in morning ambient light, reducing the glare and scatter that makes vision appear less sharp in the early morning hours. Second, adequate antioxidant protection of the photoreceptors means that the overnight repair process, which is dependent on antioxidant availability, proceeds more efficiently, and the photoreceptors begin the next day in better structural condition. Research published in the journal Investigative Ophthalmology and Visual Science demonstrated that daily lutein and zeaxanthin supplementation produced measurable improvements in contrast sensitivity and visual acuity in older adults over a 12-month period, alongside significant increases in macular pigment optical density. A study in the British Journal of Ophthalmology found that higher dietary lutein intake was associated with significantly lower rates of age-related macular degeneration progression over a 10-year follow-up. But sweet corn addresses the morning vision picture through a second distinct mechanism that is entirely separate from the macular carotenoids. Corn is a meaningful source of vitamin B6, pyridoxine, alongside folate and pantothenic acid. These B vitamins are involved in the biochemistry of the retinal pigment epithelium, and specifically in the homocysteine metabolism pathway that, when disrupted, produces elevated circulating homocysteine levels. Elevated homocysteine is one of the most underappreciated risk factors for retinal vascular disease. It damages the endothelium of the small vessels supplying the retina, promotes retinal ischemia, and accelerates the oxidative damage to retinal tissue that impairs overnight repair. B6, folate, and B12 working together are the dietary regulators of homocysteine levels, and chronic inadequacy of any of them can allow homocysteine to accumulate in ways that progressively compromise retinal vascular health. The third mechanism brings us to the omega-3 dimension. And this is where I want to suggest that the most effective evening approach for morning vision combines corn with a source of omega-3 fat. Sweet corn provides carotenoids and some natural fat. What it does not provide in significant amounts is omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, the long-chain omega-3 that is a structural component of the photoreceptor cell membranes and the meibomian gland secretions. For the full picture of overnight visual repair, covering the photoreceptor membrane integrity, the meibomian gland function, and the tear film lipid quality alongside the carotenoid mechanisms, pairing corn with a source of omega-3 in the evening meal produces a more comprehensive nutritional support than either alone. Practically, this means that an evening meal that includes sweet corn alongside salmon, sardines, or mackerel, or for plant-based eaters, alongside a tablespoon of ground flaxseed and some walnuts, addresses the carotenoid, the omega-3, and the retinal repair dimensions simultaneously. This is the combination that the research most consistently supports for the overnight eye repair process. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Caroline. Caroline was 68. She had been a keen reader her entire life, 3 or 4 books a month, fiction primarily, something she described as one of the genuine pleasures of her retirement. Over the previous 18 months, she had noticed a progressive worsening of her morning vision that was interfering with this pleasure. She would wake up, make tea, settle into her reading chair by 7:30, and find that reading was genuinely uncomfortable for the first hour, the text blurry, the eyes dry and irritated, the effort required disproportionate to what it had been a couple of years earlier. Her ophthalmologist had confirmed dry eye disease, mild in severity, and recommended lubricating drops. The drops helped somewhat, but did not resolve the morning blurriness to her satisfaction. Her macular pigment optical density, when measured, was at the low end of normal, not pathological, but indicating depletion of her retinal carotenoid reserve. I spoke with Caroline about the nutrition of overnight eye repair. We talked about lutein and zeaxanthin, about the meibomian gland function, about omega-3 and tear film lipid quality. I suggested she make 2 changes to her evening eating. First, add a portion of sweet corn to her dinner 4 or 5 evenings per week. The yellow variety, cooked, eaten with a drizzle of olive oil to maximize carotenoid absorption. Second, add a portion of oily fish, salmon or sardines, 2 or 3 evenings per week for the omega-3 dimension. At 6 weeks, Caroline reported that the morning blurriness was noticeably reduced. Not eliminated, her underlying dry eye disease was still present, and her ophthalmologist remained involved. But the sharpness of her vision when she sat down to read at 7:30 had improved meaningfully. She described the difference as between reading through slightly frosted glass and reading through clear glass. She was still using her drops, but less frequently. At 3 months, her follow-up macular pigment measurement showed a modest but measurable increase in optical density, consistent with the timeline expected from consistent dietary carotenoid provision. Her ophthalmologist noted the improvement and asked what had changed. When Caroline described her dietary adjustments, her ophthalmologist paused and then said something that I think captures the state of nutritional ophthalmology succinctly. She said, "I trained for a long time and I was never taught anything about this." Caroline continues her evening corn and fish habit. She describes her reading mornings as essentially restored to what they were 3 years ago. Now let me be specific and practical about how to use this correctly, because the details significantly affect how much benefit you receive. A half to 1 cup of cooked yellow sweet corn in the evening meal, 4 to 5 evenings per week. Yellow variety specifically. White corn contains significantly lower concentrations of lutein and zeaxanthin, as these pigments are responsible for the yellow color and are largely absent in white varieties. Fresh corn on the cob is excellent, as is frozen corn, which retains carotenoids well. Canned corn is a reasonable third option, though the carotenoid content is somewhat lower after the canning process. The single most important detail for maximizing the benefit is fat alongside the corn. Lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble carotenoids. Their absorption from the gut into the bloodstream and ultimately to the retinal tissue requires dietary fat to be present in the same meal. Corn eaten as part of a meal that includes olive oil, avocado, fish, nuts, or any other healthy fat source will deliver considerably more bioavailable lutein and zeaxanthin to the retina than corn eaten without fat. This is not a minor effect. Research has shown that consuming carotenoid-rich foods with added fat increases lutein absorption by 3 to 5 times compared to the same food eaten fat-free. A drizzle of olive oil over corn or eating it as part of a meal that includes salmon addresses this directly. Pair with oily fish, 2 or 3 evenings per week for the omega-3 component. Salmon, sardines, and mackerel are the most convenient and most cost-effective sources of DHA in forms that the eye can use directly. The combination of corn's lutein and zeaxanthin with the DHA from oily fish creates a complementary nutritional profile that addresses the photoreceptor membrane integrity and the meibomian gland function alongside the macular pigment replenishment. They are not redundant. They are addressing different parts of the same overnight visual repair process. If you are plant-based and do not eat fish, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed or chia seeds alongside the corn provides ALA omega-3, which the body converts to DHA, though less efficiently than direct marine sources. A DHA-specific algal oil supplement is a more reliable option for plant-based eaters, specifically targeting eye health. Avoid cooking corn in ways that destroy the carotenoids. High-heat prolonged cooking, boiling for extended periods, microwaving in water, leaches water-soluble nutrients and damages some of the carotenoid content. Light steaming, roasting, or eating it as part of a stir-fry with brief cooking preserves the lutein and zeaxanthin most effectively. Let me now address the broader context of overnight eye health, because the evening meal is one dimension of a larger picture. Hydration is the most immediately actionable factor for morning tear film quality. The tear film's aqueous layer is water-based, and the mild dehydration that accumulates during sleep is a direct contributor to morning ocular dryness. Drinking a glass of water before bed, not such a large amount that it disrupts sleep with bathroom trips, but a moderate glass, and drinking water promptly upon waking before anything else helps restore the plasma volume that the tear film draws from. This is the simplest possible intervention for morning eye comfort, and it costs nothing. Screen exposure in the final hour before bed is relevant to morning eye clarity for 2 reasons. First, the blue light emitted by screens suppresses melatonin production, which delays the onset of deep sleep. And deep sleep is when the most significant ocular repair processes occur. Second, extended screen viewing before bed maintains the eyes in a state of accommodative effort and reduced blink rate, increasing ocular surface dryness going into the sleep period. Reducing screen exposure in the hour before bed, or using blue light filtering glasses if it is unavoidable, helps the eyes enter the sleep period in a more recovered state. Vitamin A deserves specific mention. Rhodopsin regeneration, the process that restores photoreceptor readiness overnight, is directly vitamin A dependent. The most bioavailable dietary source of vitamin A is preformed retinol from animal foods: liver, oily fish, dairy, eggs. Plant foods provide beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A, but the conversion efficiency is variable and generally lower in older adults than in younger ones. For people whose diets are low in vitamin A sources, this may be contributing to morning visual sluggishness that is separate from the carotenoid and omega-3 mechanisms I have discussed. Sweet potato, carrots, and dark leafy greens are good beta-carotene sources for the plant side. 2 to 3 eggs per week provides meaningful preformed vitamin A from the yolk. Let me close with the bigger picture. The clarity of your morning vision is not simply the result of how well you slept. It is the result of how well your eyes were able to perform their overnight maintenance, regenerating rhodopsin, restoring the tear film, repairing photoreceptor oxidative damage, maintaining the macular pigment that protects the central retina. All of these processes are nutritionally dependent. They require specific compounds: lutein, zeaxanthin, DHA, vitamin A, B vitamins, in sufficient quantities, delivered consistently in bioavailable forms. For most older adults in Western countries, the retinal carotenoid reserve is below what it needs to be for optimal overnight repair. The omega-3 status supporting meibomian gland function and photoreceptor membrane integrity is below where it needs to be. And nobody has ever sat down with them and explained that the blurry, dry, slow to clear vision of their mornings has a nutritional component that is addressable through dinner. I want to close this video by being clear about what this is and what it is not. Everything I have described today is nutritional support for the overnight repair processes of healthy aging eyes. It is not a treatment for diagnosed eye disease. It is not a substitute for regular comprehensive eye examinations, which everyone over 50 should be having annually, or more frequently if there are specific risk factors. If you have been diagnosed with age-related macular degeneration, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, or any other significant eye condition, please continue working with your ophthalmologist and bring any dietary changes to their attention. For everyone else, for the majority of people over 60 whose morning vision is softer and slower to clear than it used to be, whose eyes feel drier and more uncomfortable in the morning than they did a decade ago, whose reading in lower light requires more effort than it should, the nutritional approach I have described today is directly relevant, evidence-backed, and begins working at the biological level from the first night you implement it. Yellow sweet corn in the evening, fat alongside it for absorption, oily fish 2 or 3 evenings a week, a glass of water before sleep and immediately upon waking, light management in the hour before bed. Simple, consistent, targeted at the exact biology of overnight visual repair. Give it 4 to 6 weeks of genuine consistency. Notice your mornings. Notice how quickly vision arrives when you open your eyes. Notice how your eyes feel in the first 30 minutes of the day. Your eyes have been working for you every waking moment of your entire life. They deserve the most specific, most informed nutritional support you can give them during the hours they are trying to repair themselves. Give them that tonight. If this was useful to you, please subscribe to the channel and share it with someone whose mornings start with the frustration of eyes that take too long to clear. Leave a comment below and tell me, what does your morning vision currently feel like? Is it the dryness, the blurriness, the slow adaptation? I read every comment and your responses shape everything I cover in this series. I am Dr. Julian Cross. Take care of yourselves and your eyes tonight, and I will see you in the next one.